Okay, I think it's time for us to start. So good morning. Welcome to CCAMP session. So I think it's a really long time for many of us to have this kind of face-to-face meeting, right, since COVID-19. So firstly, let's welcome Louis and Hao Mian. And also thanks to Oscar disappeared. Thanks Oscar for his great job for many years for CCAMP. Yeah. So I would like to invite my co-chair, Louis, to do my job, actually. Thank you.
Well, Oscar is here, by the way. Okay, welcome everyone. So, okay. Yeah, there's a bit of delay. So first, introduce the note well. So this the note well reflects the rules that apply to the IETF meeting. So all of you need to be aware of that and follow the different procedures. There is a number of documents, the BCPs describing the points. So yeah, we expect that you are familiar with that. Next, please. Yeah, regarding the conduct lines, so just to note as well that we expect the meeting to run with respect and courtesy for the different people intervening and commenting on the meeting. So please keep in personal discussions and focus on the technical aspects. So next. Okay. Regarding meeting tips, yeah, for those in person here in Yokohama. So be sure that you connect to the Meet Echo for joining the queue. So signal with the right hand that you want to join the queue. Keep the audio and the video off, please, in order to avoid echo and perturbances during the meeting. And yeah, a reminder about the mask. So wear mask unless you are speaking actively at the microphone. For those remote participants, so make sure that your video is and audio is off unless you present. So next, please. So some more administrative details. So Meeteco is the conference, online conference tool that we are using. So you can, in the link in the second bullet, you can train yourself for the usage of Meeteco for those that are not familiar with that. Next, please. So more about administrative stuff. So there is a link for taking notes online. So we appreciate the people that could contribute taking notes and helping on the stuff for reporting what has been discussed here. So yeah, please volunteer for that and contribute to the notes. Regarding Blue Sheet is no longer needed. It's automatically recorded by register in Meeteco. And just a reminder of IPR process. Please be aware that all the procedures for IPR, for polling the drafts, for authors and contributors, to be sure that all the IPR is registered before we can continue with the adoption process of the drafts. Next, please. Well, details on the session. So we have 2 hours for today. The agenda is in the link in the slide, so you can access easily to the materials and sessions there. Next. So regarding the agenda, you see we have a very packed agenda. Please be respectful in the allocated time in order that all the people could intervene with the proper time for discussion. Next. An important reminder regarding the usage of the mailing list. All the discussions are encouraged to be taken in the mailing list as a way of making the working group dynamic. All the open issues, the introduction of new drafts, and also whatever issue that could be whatever work item in the CCAMP, also including the proposal of new ideas. Next, please. So now I hand over to Daniele, that will go.
Thanks a lot, Luis. So, a short update on the status of the working group. Since last meeting, we don't have any new RFCs, but we have a draft in the editor queue. I just saw this morning that the draft has been approved by all the authors, so I guess it only needs the approval from John to be moved forward. So, very last steps for the draft. Today, as you've seen, we have a very packed agenda. We have plenty of working group drafts being discussed. We will hear from them in a while. While waiting, a short update on the drafts that will not be presented today. So we have layer 1 and OTN topology. We are in post working group last call. We were waiting for the routing directorate review, which arrived a few days ago, more or less 1 week ago. So we needed to have the comments fixed, and then the draft will be sent to the SG. If I correctly remember, these are the drafts Dan is shepherding, right? Ethernet client T topology Young model. Minimal updates have been done to the draft just to keep alive. We need a little bit of more thorough review on the draft and evaluate it, but this will be done after the other topology models, the OTN and the FlexiGrid, which have a higher priority in our backlog. We grouped all of these drafts together. We have seen some minor updates on them. There wasn't a big discussion on the mini list, so we need a little bit more discussion and review on the mini list. So if you are interested in any of these topics, please review the drafts, send your comments to the list so that we can progress the documents. The layer 1 connectivity service model, this has passed the working group last call. We are waiting for Shepherd write-up. Luis volunteered, or better, we volunteered Luis to be the Shepherd of the draft. He is working on the write-up. The transport and BI applicability statement, this one has expired. If I correctly remember, this is the draft that was on a diet. How's the diet going?
How is the diet? How's the document diet going? Yes, yeah. I'm literally open.
Yeah, I was referring to the document.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. It's just I'm big boned. So the document's open on my laptop at the moment. I'm just kind of working through the edits. So thank you for the suggestions. I did have a couple of clarifications, but we are meeting after CCAMP today, I believe. So apologies for the delay, but yeah, we hope to get the document submitted, even potentially by the end of the week.
Wonderful, thanks. OTN tunnel model, this has not been updated since the last meeting. We are keeping on monitoring the T tunnel model, which, if I'm not mistaken, is not progressing in the T's working group. So that's a sort of a showstopper. Same thing applies to the Darbison tunnel model. So we have this pre-requirement to progress the work. One other thing on the Darbison tunnel model is that I don't remember if it was at the last meeting or in between meetings, but we agreed to merge it with the FlexiGrid tunnel to have, I mean, since the two documents have a lot in common, we decided it made sense to merge them. Now the working group is working on how to do that because some work is needed to merge the two modules. And finally, liaisons and communication. We received two liaisons since last meeting. One from ITU-OT, and the other from the ETSI ISG NFV working group. So the one from ITU-OT is an invitation to update the information in the IMT 2020 and beyond roadmap. This was submitted back in December. We are past the deadline, but I mean, we will try to answer as soon as possible. Scott, would you like to comment on this liaison?
Yeah, Scott Mansfield Erickson. The deadline was set up for the previous JCA meeting. There's another JCA meeting in April. I have sent around a suggestion for the response, and I'm still collating that because I just need to get some more working group chairs to reply that this is the subset of the 400 RFCs that I identified that we really want to send. So that's what I'm looking for. The next meeting isn't until the 18th of April, so we can handle it on the email list.
Wonderful.
Thanks.
Thanks for the update. The other one is towards these, the OPSA working group and the CCAMP. Basically is a communication and the start of work on profiling specification for multi-site connectivity services based on ACTN. We discussed about this draft earlier this week with the TIS and the OPSA working group chairs. We will agree on a reply. If I correctly remember, the TIS chairs agreed to take the lead on this one. Liaison sent both of them to the study group 15 in IETF. Oscar, maybe you want to comment on the previous one?
Yes, that we have invited for the session tomorrow of this Diego Lopez from ETSI to present from ETSI side the liaison at the beginning, when in the same time as at the beginning of the session. So just to come to the mic and say, so if you want to have some more information for tomorrow morning.
Wonderful.
And we will take the, as agreed between OPS, CCAMP and TIAS, we take the lead of doing the answer consensuated with the both members. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Oscar. Then we sent a liaison to IETF study group 15 question 6 on a clarification application codes. Basically, while building our models, we realized that the same application code was used for two different scenarios. We asked if that was done on purpose or not. And I think we already received the reply. I don't remember if it was a formal one or an informal preview. I would need to check that. With that said, I think, is there any comment or we can start with the first presentation? The first presenter is Sergio, which is remote.
Hi, Daniele.
Sergio,
Can you hear me?
hello, good morning.
Hi. Good morning for you. Okay. I'm Sergio Bellotti from Nokia. I'm going to present the status of data model for optical impairment aware topology on behalf of the other co-authors and contributors that you can see in the front page. Okay. Since the IETF116, we make some progress. From the text point of view, we review all the text to be able to align terminology with the new terms and definition related to the ITU-T G807. We add a specific appendix to describe how the model, our young model, can support remote optical transponder connected to the WDM node. And we also added a specific JSON example for this case. We added a new section related to the OMS media channel group protection. And so we added the last in the last version, the OTSI optical OPS protection. And here we added the OMS MCG protection description, how the model is dealing with that. And we introduce the definition of the end-to-end media channel that is used in the document, but there was no definite definition. From the Young update, we have removed the key in the media channel list that is a parameters that was represented by a parameter. The n parameters represented related to the nominal center frequency granularity. Because we are not able to have this information, for example, in all use cases, and we cannot say what is the flex n in case, for example, we have the remote optical shelf, because the configuration is done due to the RODAM network. And so from remote shelf, in case a specific controller is dealing with that part of the network, is not able to know how the RODAM network will be configured. And we added an optical impairment profile. So in order to use a set of the optical, to use a subset of the optical impairment topology for other implication, for other application. And we added a new channel power penalty. This is a modification that is done in RFC 93 bis, but is related to the optical impairments model. Next. So the OMS MCG protection is a 1+1 protection architecture, where the TLink that is representing the OMS MCG between two WDM TA node is 1+1 protected. This 1+1 OMS protection is a local protection, and can be modeled in based on TLink properties that is already defined in RFC 8795. So since the optical impairment model is augmenting the TIS topo module, we have no impact on the Young. So RFC 8795 already provides what is needed from Young code. The way the model is using what is already defined in Young, we have two approaches. One is next, please. Next again, because I commented directly in the picture. Okay, so we have the modeling approach is in case of 1+1. We have in this case the approach in which we have 3 links exposed in the model. One OMS protected link that is on top on the picture, and 2 OMS link represented the primary and secondary OMS MCG. we use, in this case, the link protection type in the link protection attribute of 8795 will be set to one of the protection type defined in the identities defined in RFC 8776, and the underlay container is practically saying that the underlying protection scheme exists and is instantiated and is referencing the underlying primary and secondary OMS link, and the link protection type is, as said, already set to one of the identities. The primary and secondary OMS link report the optical impairment parameters of the primary and secondary OMS MCG. One possibility alternative is possible to report just the worst case of the two. Next, please. Okay. An alternative approach is to expose just OMS one link, the OMS protected link. In this case, the link protection type again is set one of the identity, but the underlying container is not instantiated. The optical impairment exposed for these are typically based on the optical impairment of the worst of the two underlying physical OMS link that in this case are not exposed. Next, please. Next again. Next. This is represented what I described. So in all this description, the splitter and selector function are not represented as separate entities. Splitter and selector are taken into account or in the 1+1 protected TE-link of the optical impairment of 1+1 protected TE-link, or in the optical impairment of the rodent path in the two adjacent WDN TE node that is abstracted by a connectivity matrix and the local link connectivity list. Next, next. And this is a representation of one case. So this is the case of a single protected OMS link. And in this case, we show that splitter and selector is comprised in the WDM TE node in this case. Okay, next. Another update in the draft, as said, is the addition of the profile, because based on previous discussion and comment that we received since IETF 114, was raised an issue related to the possibility to use a subset of the optical impairment topology model for other application. I don't know, for example, the structure for triage. One option to have this type of functionality is allowing to profile the model in the similar way that it is described in draft BUSI TST topology profile. There is a well-described summary of all the modification done in the model to obtain the profile in the GitHub at the link that I put here. One thing that we need again to address is the fact that, okay, we provide this profile for other application, but we need to add a document describing, let me say, to add in our draft a section to describe a mandatory profile for optical impairment application to demonstrate the interoperability. We added a new issue for that with the target to indicate the list of attributes in the model that are now optional because not needed for a non-optical impairment application, but that you need to instantiate and use in case of optical impairment application. This is a new issue that we need to address to complete the picture of the profile. Next, please. Okay, open issue. We track all the open issue at the link that I reported here. We have closed 6 issues since IETF 115. Still 7 open issues remain to closed, but some of them, at least 4 of them, are partially closed. So in particular, the first 4 issue, the first one is related to OMS protection. We did just to refine what is already there with another picture that is coming from one set of slides that we use to update the model. The text, sorry. We need to address as said in the previous slide, the mandatory profile for optical impairment application. And okay, we remove the key as described in the media channel list. We just have an action here to verify the usage in a statement, unique statement, avoiding to have more elements in the list with the same flexi. That is not possible.
Sergio, sorry to interrupt. We have 3 minutes and we still need to go through the
Yes,
RFC 1993
yes.
bis. Maybe
Okay.
we can jump to the next steps.
Okay. No, just say that the last 3 is practically not totally dependent of optical impairment. So we are waiting for feedback for the flex grid weekly call. Next. Okay, next step for us, the draft is ready for the young doctor review. So we wanted to have this young doctor review after this meeting. We need to address the issue, conclude the issue that I described before. For the rest, the draft is stable. We have no foreseen to add other features. And the target would be to ask the last call by next IETF. Okay, just to remind that we have an official weekly call any Tuesday, and everybody is welcome to attend. Okay. Okay, I need to update also for the RFC 9093 bis on behalf of other co-authors and contributors. Next. Okay, update from the last IETF. We closed 2 issues that are related, in fact, for the first one for the optical impairment. We added supported mode present container in the view of the profile application that I described before. We added this supported mode, even if in this case there was no ambiguity in case of empty list. That is one of the issue that we adjust in the context of profile. Since in this case we have no ambiguity for an empty list, because the transceiver will always support at least one mode. But we used to add anyway the presence container for alignment with the adopted profile solution. And we add the RX power penalty, in this case to extend the operative region of the receiver. We change the definition of the minimum SNR and introduce the new list for power penalty. Next, I reported here the
Sergio,
modification.
We are already a couple of minutes late. Can you conclude, please, on this one?
Okay, here I reported the modification of and the introduction of the new list for the channel power penalty and the container supported mode with the minimum element 1. Next. Okay, for the open issue, we have the one issue closed specific for this RFC. We need to review the list and of the remaining open issue and create and try to solve first the issue that can create a dependency for stable draft almost close to last call, like optical impairments or others. So we need to have an analysis on the remaining open issue. We have still the weekly call, the optical impairment, and we also treat the issue for 1993 bis in the context of that weekly call. Next step, please. We need to complete the Appendix A with the changes from RFC 1993, and as said, to prioritize and fixing after this analysis the remaining issue. Okay.
Okay, thanks. Any question? So we will take the action to ask for the young doctor review of the optical impairment, optical impairment draft. That will be done for sure immediately, as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Now we have the, thanks a lot, Sergio. Now we have the presentation on OTN net slicing.
Okay, hi everyone. It's good to see you all here. This is Iwako from FutureWeek, and I'm presenting an update to the OTN slicing draft on behalf of the co-authors and contributors. So this is a major update for the draft since the last IETF. The main thing we did was was an attempt to try to separate part of the data model that describes the network slice topology from the existing OTN slicing models. This is actually a change to reflect what we have discussed, that the topology construct is technology agnostic and can perhaps apply to any type of network sizes. So instead, now the network slice topology model was actually proposed in a separate draft to the TIS working group, which is a reuse of the of a previous draft provided by Shufen. So we can have a separate call to a presentation for that. Now, what we have is for OTN slice, it augments the network slice, both the network slice topology model and also the network slice MBI model, adding the OTN technology specific arguments for SLO SLEs. So the attributes, we removed some of the old attributes for SLO, SLE that was added to OTN slice based on the requirements for supporting 5G. And I think they are pretty much not that applicable to OTN slicing, so we removed it. Also, we reposition some of the explicit path references to a different container based on the updates from the NSMBI YAM model, just to align it with the updates from the base model, and also have some text description updated accordingly. Next page. Right, so this is like an update to the model relationship. On the left is the old relationship. For this draft, we have the two modules, the OTN slice and also what do we call transport network slice, actually with the topology definition in there, right? And after the update, we have still an OTN slice and also another transport network slice module, but without the topology definition. And as you can see, the topology model was moved to the new draft IETF network slice topology. So what it seems to be the case now is I think next page maybe, yeah. Right, so that's the first open issue is about the model dependency between a working group draft and a non-working group draft in TIS, right? So what it says, the OTN slice is currently depending on the network slice topology, which is still an individual draft. To resolve this issue, we have several options discussed. The first option is obviously to request TIS working group to adopt the network slice topology, so it becomes a working group draft and we can progress both at the same time. And I think this is the preferred option from the authors. And there are two other options. One is to we could create a new individual draft that contains just the OTN augments, basically to augment the IETF network slice topology with OTN SLO SLEs and make it like a split from the current OTN slice model. But that will create another new draft, and with additional efforts to make it, right? So I think it's less preferred. And the third option we could consider is to progress OTN slice in phases. Basically, for the first phase, we wanted to conclude the connectivity only OTN slices, along with the NSMBI base model. And then for the phase two, we could consider adding, making the topology part a working group draft. So it's still open. We are discussing that. Hopefully, we'll reach some conclusion by the next IETF, and probably any inputs.
If you would like some inputs from the working group, probably this is the good time to discuss. Okay. My feedback would be to target option one.
Yes.
Given also the good relationship that we have with these and all the cross work that we are doing together.
Absolutely, yeah. That was actually that's the plan for now. Okay, I'll take this in So next page. Right. So another open issue is there are still a couple of what do we consider the technology agnostic attributes that we wanted to see if it's possible to merge with the generic NSMBI. For example, we have described like path disjointness, as well as a couple of optimization criteria and something related to OTN underlay, whether the resize of the OTN slice would affect service for if it's an OTN network underneath, right? So those are the things that can be considered as sort of generic attributes, and we're going to create issues to the NSMBI and discuss that over the meeting. Next page. Yeah. Right. So here's the next steps. So we're going to address all those open issues, and we're going to continue work with the NSMBI to align the two models. And actually, we had some side meeting yesterday and had some new thoughts about how we can progress the topology model. There's a new proposal. We probably can discuss offline for that. Other than that, we intend to add a few examples for the different types of OTN slices and put it in the draft. Finally, yeah, we have the GitHub repository and we have weekly call on every Thursday. So you're more than welcome to join the work. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, thanks for this work. And I think as one of the authors of network slice service model, I feel like this slice topology may need more clarification, especially like the network slice framework, because right now network slice framework only talking about like SDP, the service demarcation point, like how that like nodes or link is this like can be clarified in what is that means in the network slice. You call it slice, right? So that is like, I think that's a gap there. So maybe needs more discussion. Thanks.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Not.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. A small suggestion for the next presenters: if you have like 10 minutes allocated for your of time, please try to make the presentation a little bit shorter to save some time for discussion. That's probably the most valuable usage of your time. FlexiGrid updates. Dan, please.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Let me see if I can snatch some time back as well. So next slide, please. Essentially, this was a session or presentation on the state of the FlexiGrid nation. We have paused the processing of one of our key documents, which was the topology. It was in John's to-do list for review, because we've had some additional requirements that potentially affected that document, as well as several other documents. So what I want to do with this presentation is just sort of give you an update on where we are, what potentially will change, how we expect to process those changes, and what effect they're going to have on a variety of documents. Next slide, please. So there's actually several documents that could be affected by these new requirements, including existing RFCs, so the WSON document. Actually, the topology won't be affected, but the tunnel will be affected. FlexiGrid topology, FlexiGrid tunnel, some of the OTN models as well, including the topology tunnel, potentially path computation, and we just need to be aware as we kind of work through the impairments document, that there may not be a substantive change, but it's something that we need to consider. Next. So what are these new requirements? I suppose with hindsight, they were obvious, but it's increasingly important for operators to be able to have a view of the network that includes mixed technology. So this essentially has a red box, which would be your single instance, your single view of the network. And on the left of the diagram, we've got our WSON nodes with the yellow links, and then on the right, the FlexiGrid nodes with the red links. So why is this an important observation? Well, it's the fact that you may have a significantly larger network with several rings or topologies, and you want to have one model that kind of shows all of these without having to have multiple models that are aggregated. And the benefits here of having a single view are really sort of operational. So you would be able to reduce the amount of state potentially that you're having to manage, and it makes it easier for optimization of your network resources as well. And you may not only be restricted to these two technologies, you may have some other optical technology that you want to show in a single instance. Next slide, please. Now, we've taken the approach in the past that each technology would be modeled separately. So this new view would allow multiple technology to be displayed in a single instance. But you may also want to have multiple instances with multiple technologies being displayed as well. So I'll step through some of these scenarios in a moment. And during the discussion of the new requirements, we also identified that potentially in the future, you might also want to have an even lower view of your optical network, so right at the physical layer. But we have to be kind of mindful of the fact that several vendors may have slightly different implementations and technology parameters that need to be exposed and viewed as part of that sort of instance. Next slide, please. So these are the kind of the three topologies that we've identified during our FlexiGrid calls. And remember that these kind of weekly calls that we have, just try to kind of constrain the search space in terms of use cases and scenarios, so then we can bring them to the working group and then let the working group decide if kind of these are applicable across other vendors or operators within the working group. So please, if you're not attending the FlexiGrid calls, now is the time to kind of let us know if there are sort of additional scenarios that maybe need to be covered. But we feel we've got sort of a good quorum of people, a good representation of both vendors and operators on these FlexiGrid calls. So what we don't want to do is kind of make decisions on these weekly calls and then apply those decisions without sort of working group consensus. Next slide, please. So it's very simple. This is, again, a single view. You can see with the sort of red dotted box there, that's showing sort of an OTN network that's on top of a physical network view with the interfaces and the identifiers, the LTPs of the interfaces. Next slide, please. Things will get a little bit more complicated now because we've got three topology instances, each with a single technology view: Ethernet, OTN, and physical. And when you have a relatively small network, obviously it won't be a particularly large model. And next slide, please. I thought I had another slide which would show a single instance with multiple technologies. And when you combine or at least evaluate a single instance showing multiple technologies versus multi-instance with a single technology, you can significantly reduce the amount of information that you're having to kind of manage. So it's a lot more effective. And it would help the operator kind of optimize their network deployment and operations and a lot more efficiently. So what is potentially the impact here? So what do we need to do next? Well, the first thing is we need to bring back at least one document that had already passed the last call and was being processed by our esteemed AD. We will need to update that document and essentially kind of talk about this new requirement and start signposting to other documents where we describe our new approach. And we want to avoid this potential issue in the future where we kind of have to sort of pause documents and bring them back to the working group by making sure that we're future proofing. We're making this backwards compatible so we can kind of build on the work that we're doing at the moment. Now, this is all sort of great in theory, but we still need to make sure that the approach we're taking is something that can be implemented. So we'll probably have to kind of look at some of the scenarios and the size of the networks and ensure that these models potentially aren't going to be unwieldy, that they won't be too big, that it won't create scaling issues, especially when you start modeling multiple technologies in a single instance, because of course, one benefit of partitioning is that you can kind of scale the problem in terms of state management. And making sure that we haven't introduced any unforeseen issues and circumstances as well, ideally. So we would hope that the working group will review these changes to ensure that none of those potential issues have been introduced. Next slide, please. Great. So now we can kind of see specifically which documents are affected. We will, I suppose, one unintended consequence here is that we can now reduce the number of documents that we need to actively work on. So we're going to merge the WSON and FlexiGrid document. So that's obviously going to save working group time and effort for our RSC editors and the review time from the working group perspective. So those are the red documents. The orange documents are going to have to, at least one, which is in John's queue, will have to come back to the working group and be updated. There's no substantive change to the models themselves. We just need to kind of discuss this new requirement and then point to other documents. And then hopefully the green documents, although they need to be considered as a part of a collective and not in isolation, they should remain unaffected. Next slide, please. So I think I've pretty much covered the immediate actions, and those, obviously the technologies affected here are just CCAMP technologies, so it's WSON, FlexiGrid, potentially OTN. Considering that we have introduced these new requirements, then we might need to add some additional text, at least in one of the documents that talks about the applicability of the models and how they would be used, and the sort of justification of sort of having single instance multi-technology or multi-instance single technology. And we can potentially do that in one of the documents, or in order to avoid sort of duplicate text in multiple documents, or we could have an applicability ID after we finish developing the technology models themselves. So that's kind of an outstanding question that doesn't have to be answered immediately, because we need to do the work first anyway, at least the technical work. But if anyone has an opinion on that, then feel free to kind of mention that when we have our Q&A. And then, so that's sort of short-term, mid-term, and then the longer-term piece of sort of work / discussion that we need to have on our FlexiGrid calls and bring that back to the working group at some point is whether we need a new layer 0 model, which could then be used to sort of underpin some of the higher layer optical models that we have. Again, we want to avoid the mistake that we made with the current work, so we can apply this to both single technology and mixed technology environments. But as I kind of mentioned at the start of the presentation, there are dragons when you start looking at the physical layer. Each vendor will potentially implement things slightly differently, even from a sort of language perspective. There may be slight deviations in terms, and we can't model every capability in the physical layer for every vendor, but we may be able to come up or agree some sort of common attributes or parameters and capability. But it's something that needs further discussion. Next step, please. Next slide. Great. So hopefully it's clear what we intend to do with the existing models, how we plan to make the changes, and the motivation of why we wanted to make these changes. It's really to reflect the operator requirements, which is hopefully sort of the main way that we should be developing these models. And then once we've updated those existing models, then we can look at starting the applicability of the models and potentially a new model as well. And as I mentioned, we will continue to have our weekly FlexiGrid calls. It's just a very effective way to continue to discuss this environment and make sure that we move the work along in a timely fashion. I think that is the final slide.
It is.
So any questions, comments, disagreements, agreements, approvals?
It seems to be a lot of work.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I felt like when we started the FlexiGrid work, I actually had hair, and it's just kind of just fallen out over time. But what we don't want to do, and the mistake that we haven't made here is that we've kind of published the work, had it as an RFC, and then thought, you know what, this is not how we want to use this model, and we've now got to write a bunch of new RFCs that are going to replace that. So I'm glad that we've kind of had this discussion now. We can make the changes. It has taken multiple years to kind of progress this work. I think we started it in 2017, but the market kind of, or even earlier. Even earlier. But it's been market driven as well. So it kind of reflects the number of deployments and what's actually installed in the field as well. Who are you?
Yes, Iowa here. So I wanted to point out that the changes we are discussing here was because of the new use cases that we have received from multiple sources, right? And I think since we took the effort to make the change, I think it's important to also ask specifically, operators who are looking into this work, see if they have additional use case that they might want to address. I think it's important to make sure that we cover all the use cases that we have foreseen so far, without needing to coming back again.
So let's be specific then. So we've had 2 operators who have helped us kind of develop these requirements and provide these use cases. Is that enough to kind of move forward? Ideally, if you're considering where we are at the moment, if there are sort of Japanese, Chinese, Asian operators or US operators that want to kind of provide an opinion here, whether it's to say, yes, this is how we would use the models, and yes, we agree that these are the scenarios that we would use them in, that would be really good. Equally, it would be great if people want to say, no, we wouldn't have a sort of mixed technology environment in a single instance. The nice thing about the approach that we're taking is that it's modular, which would allow you to kind of use it in multiple ways. And I suppose what I was just mentioned there is there something that we've missed entirely, that's kind of blindsided us? And just to underline that we really want to make sure that we're future-proofing this work, and as we develop new models for new technologies, higher layers moving forward, that they would be compatible with this work as well. That's a strong objective.
In order to do some advertisement and collect some support for this, may I suggest you to send a mail to the mailing list saying that these would be all the benefits if we did the changes. I mean, we would lose, even if it's not real losing, a bit of time, but this would be the benefits.
Yeah, the rationale. So we can go a bit further than that actually, and say, look, here are the strengths, here are potential weaknesses, and hopefully the benefits significantly outweigh the weaknesses. But yeah, it's a good idea, and maybe we can copy in another working group as well, like maybe TEAS or something, just to let them know that because a lot of this CCAMP work is of course dependent on the models that we've got in TEAS as well.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Dan. Scott, you're next.
Oh, perfect. Hi, Scott Mansfield from Ericsson. I'm here to talk about the microwave topology work that we've been doing. So next slide. Okay, so the main changes that we've had is since the last meeting is we split the draft into 3 different drafts because there was some work on adaptive availability, bandwidth availability, and interface reference work that was integrated into the microwave topology module, but it was determined that the bandwidth availability and the interface reference topology work is generic. So why not split that out? And there's a note from the CCAMP chair that's the reason that I just went ahead and created the GitHubs as an IETF, draft IETF, not individual, even though they are new ones based off of the work that was already there. So there's a summary of the mail archive if anybody has any questions about that. So, and this provides the link to all of the GitHub that we're using, and we're using the issues tracker to track the issues as we go through. So next slide. Okay, so we have there's not very many open issues now. The interface reference topology does have an open issue that, to be honest, I completely missed, and that's why it's still open. And it has to do with a review. One of the very nice Yang doctors looked at this thing and said, well, why is it here? Why can't you move it to make it even more generic and just change the tree around a little? And so we're going to be discussing that on calls coming up, because I think it's a really good idea, and there's a description of the issue and what we would like to do. And so then we would just need to keep the informative example that's in the microwave topology. All of these drafts are independent of one another, but we do have a integrated example that shows how to use these things in the microwave draft. So we would need to keep that up to date if we change the tree associated with the interface reference topology. Next slide. So the plan. I would really like to get this thing to last call. We can get this microwave topology Yang completely separately done from the other 2 modules if we really needed to. But I would also like to find and socialize where this bandwidth availability and interface reference work should live. I don't know if it's CCAMP. It might be NetMod. But that's something that I would like to discuss on the calls that we have. And I would like to continue with the weekly conference calls. So however I get those set up, I would appreciate help getting that set up. And then the last thing I wanted to say before I take some questions, if there are any, is that there is work associated with the microwave radio link RFC. We have started an individual draft. to do some enhancements to that. So I have some people that have contacted me with some ideas on how they can make that draft a lot better. So that's captured on my individual GitHub with some issues there. And so I'm interested in people that want to support that work, and maybe next time we'll ask for IETF adoption so that we can work on it as a draft IETF document. So I think that's it. Is that my last slide? I think that's my last slide.
It is.
Yeah, so there you go.
Okay, please.
I had one more comment on this interface reference one. I'm wondering whether you have considering about schema mount.
Well, we're considering it, but I find schema mount completely incomprehensible. So if there is something that we could do that would make it work, then would be greatly appreciated if you could come on and explain it to us.
I got it. Thanks.
Yep.
I should say my name is Bo from. Yeah. Thanks.
Thanks.
I just wanted to better understand how can the microwave topology Yang model be independent from the two other drafts?
Well, because
since it was a single piece and you carved it out.
Correct. Well, the way that it is, it's all done through augments. And so just like we took the example, because I worked on this with Italo, and Italo showed me how to do this, is you start with the microwave, you start with the network topology, and then you have the network TE topology, which augments the network topology. You've got microwave topology, which augments TE topology. And then bandwidth availability is simply an augment of network TE, or the TE topology, and the interface one is also. So that's what makes them generic, because they're just things that were not in the miscellaneous pile of stuff that the TE topology draft was. And so that's why they're separate. And
okay, so there is no any pre-requirement to
there is no includes, no imports, nothing that would stop microwave Yang or topology Yang from progressing separately. Yes. That is correct.
Okay. Yeah, probably. I mean, the last concern remaining was whether the two other drafts were fitting into CCAMP scope.
Right. Yeah, that's
not,
the question. So I don't know how that gets resolved. So I'm looking to area directors or people that are interested in this work. I can present it in other places as well if need be, but. It's useful.
Yeah, I mean, we can bring this to the attention of the. I don't know. Probably it falls into NetMod, OPSA. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Probably. Hi, so Rob, maybe you have some indications.
Very embarrassingly, you'll have to repeat what the issue is, because I was slightly tuned out for.
Oh, that's okay. There is the microwave topology Yang model was progressed last meeting, and one of the presented, and one of the comments that was received is that there were two other modules in that same draft, and they were for interface reference and for bandwidth availability. And so instead of progressing it as one chunk in one internet draft, we separated those modules into separate internet drafts. But they are generic. They're not something that is tied to microwave. They are tied to the TE topology work that they augment, right? And so the question is, do we progress those in CCAMP, or would there be a better home for those to progress?
The answer is I don't know. So I'm keen for work to get done and not to create process and make it harder to get work done. So I think it'd be good to at least drop NetMod, Alias, and the chairs an email to let them know about it and ask their opinion. I would say it'd be nice, and maybe we could just mention it in the NetMod meeting on Friday. There's not time in the agenda to sort of formally present it, but just to give a heads up and see if there's any indication. So so if netmod say yes, we think this should come here or go there, great. If it's like not sure or something that wants to be difficult, then I'm not necessarily opposed to it staying here as long as John doesn't complain. I don't think.
Okay, so, I mean, since there is still a lot of work to be done, we might also work on the drafts between now and the next meeting and ask for a slot at the next meeting so that you
Correct.
can properly explain
That's right.
the issue, and we can be there with you at the next meeting at NetMod.
Yeah, that's fine too.
And the other one, I heard scheme amount come up earlier, and so I don't know exactly how you want to use scheme amount.
I don't.
You don't want to use
That
it.
was
But it depends if you're wanting reference across modules, because then that has issues in terms of it being design time versus runtime.
Correct.
But if that is a problem, that again would be another useful discussion to have in NetMod and say, look, I've looked at
Correct.
scheme amount. You can, it's up to you whether you mentioned it, but we can't understand it. But also whether it's sort of covering everything that's needed would be potentially interesting.
correct.
And Yang packages is going in this direction as well. But I'm not sure that
Yes.
solves the problem. So I think knowing what the problem is might be useful. Now I feel like
Right.
I'm rambling.
That's okay.
Oscar, please.
Hi, Oscar. So regarding this bandwidth availability topology, new Yang, okay. So regarding the new draft that is generic, I would like also to bring it also to ops that there is an ongoing effort for a digital map collecting the different topology,
that's right.
the different topology models that were observed, the huge amount. So I think it would be good to coordinate it there, because I think it will be great to find where would be the best place then to progress the work. So I suggest to also to discuss it with the authors of the digital map to see where the best place is.
So send it to the ops
Yeah.
group as well. Okay, that sounds good.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Ito.
Okay, thank you. I'm Italo Busi from Huawei, presenting on behalf of co-authors the progress on the network inventory hardware model. Next slide, please. Okay, what we did, we clarify a bit in the next update. Maybe the use case is that to report from the network controller to the OSS, in particular the resource management OSS, an inventory of all the hardware elements that are in the network. And that will be in parallel with other OSS systems, and there will be some coordination in the OSS between the provisioning and the resource management. Next slide. What has been the changes? Okay, we have the document has been adopted, recently adopted as a working group document, and we addressed almost all the comments that we received from the working group adoption poll. We have three remaining issues. One is about why we are not augmenting RFC 3345. Another comment is about how to, what is the relationship between a key man room and site, whether to generalize it or not. And we had the comment about whether we need to cover or not also software components. And we have updated the model, the name of the model, and the text in the document to better measure the scope of the document. It's a network hardware inventory. And we fixed a minor issue on the reference, and we reduced the number of photos to 5 to comply with RFC 7322 requirements. And we have added a new YAM model that allows to navigate from the topology to the inventory. So it's basically referencing which topology, when a topological element is associated with a physical element, which is the corresponding physical components, and a few other minor YAM fixes. Next slide. Okay, so why not? We are not augmenting RFC 3345. The reason, the feedback that we got also from implementation is that the hardware inventory and network topology are different concepts, different applications, and typically are going to be consumed by different clients. And then we have a problem if you put everything in the same list. Then the client needs to retrieve a lot of data, because the network inventory is going to have a lot of entries, and every entry is going to be very very heavy because it's a whole topology, it's a full inventory, and doing the filtering in the client is going to be very inefficient. So the feedback we got from the implementation is, since we don't see application to retrieve both topology and inventory at the same time, but only one of the two, having them together and then filtering is becoming very heavy for both topology and for other inventory applications. So we prefer to have different root containers to have different queries, an easy way to get the information. And actually there is not too much advantage on the other side on relying on the network YAM model, because what we have from the network YAM model is only a list of network elements, nodes under the topology. Also the navigation is very limited, because we will see later on we need to navigate not only between LTPs and nodes, but we need to navigate also between components. Next slide, please. So we have addressed that problem of the navigation by creating a UYAM model, which is our multi-network topology model, to add to the topological element a reference that points to the corresponding inventory element. For example, for a node, we can say this node, logical node, is actually associated with this physical network element. This LTP, link termination point, is associated with this port component in the inventory. And in future, we are going to add also an association between a logical link and a physical cable or fiber, which have to be added to network inventory. We are going to look at more examples and see if we need more associations to be added. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. We have to also notice that we are using the term location in multiple places, and there is a bit of terminology mess. We need to clarify a bit. Some has been already clarified, some still needs to be clarified, and maybe this is something where we can get some help. For example, where we speak about where is located a room, an equipment room, we have something like I don't know what is actually the right term in English. Local street address, postal address, or I don't know what is. Most of the time I find address, but address is so broad as well. So I don't know whether we can put a better qualification in front of address, which is basically saying this is in this street, in this floor of this building. And I've got recently suggested to look at the RFC 8299 to see if there is some clarification, but also that they talk about address. So maybe we need to get a better term and a better definition about this. The second way to identify where the equipment room is the GIS location, for which we have agreed to reuse the grouping in RFC 19179. We have not yet done, but we have already agreed to do that. And these two location information for the equipment room are optional, so you can report both or only one of the two depending on the use case. Then we have a room. In the room we have rows of racks, and then we can locate where is the rack is in the room in terms of in which column and in which row it is. Then we have the chassis, which is in a specific position along the rack. And then any location is where basically is the list of equipment rooms where we found the components of the network element. And the next slide is about the component location, is another location that we need to discuss. Okay. It's basically a relative, or let me say logical position of the component within network element. And this is an item that we need to clarify. We talk about location, we don't have a clear definition about what is a component location. Another open issue that we have here is that usually what we did for this location is to define it as a free format string. So you can write whatever you want as we copy from OpenConfig. But we know that there is a special pattern that, at least for optical network elements, is quite common in used. But the problem is, and we want to make this a recommendation to be used, that the issue that we have is that whether we have a normative reference that describes how this format is done, we didn't find it. And we are not sure whether this is only for optical or is also commonly used in other technology like IP or microwave network elements. So we would like to get feedbacks from the experts in this area. Okay, this one is just a clarification slide. When we think about the component location of chassis, we have two locations, because the chassis can have a location of the chassis within the rack and a location of chassis on the logical component. This example is, for example, showing a network element foo which has two shelves. One shelf is in location number 2 of rack B, and the sub-shelf, and the second shelf is in location number 3 of the rack A. And you can see that the relative position of the chassis in the rack is 2, but the location or the local position of the main shelf in the network element is 1. So we need to have 2 locations for the chassis for the same component, depending on which container hierarchy and when I told to people, not everybody has this is clear, so I prefer to have this slide to make it clear to the people. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next steps is that we are going to continue the work and we try to keep coordination with the other inventory models. This was written before the discussion on NIMBY, but this is anyhow going to happen. And we would like to get more. We are working on some example, and we would like to get more example from other technology equipment types. And we will work on the component-specific attributes and new component types if needed. And we will continue working on the issues. We will have a weekly meeting on the CCAMP working group every Wednesday, 3 to 4 p.m. European time.
So
thank you.
Each draft has its own call. We spend more time in arranging calls than reading drafts. So please join the calls. Second, a comment. So if we are sharing that many sensitive information like geolocation, others, etc., security considerations are extremely important. And the third, I wanted to add a little bit of information here. So if you attended the OPSA working group meeting, then now in CCAMP, you might see that there is a lot of effort, a lot of different drafts on network inventory. There have been also some side meetings and a dedicated mailing list set up for network inventory, which is inventory-young@ietf.org. So if you are interested, please join that mailing list. One of the outputs of these discussions is that there might be the possibility to create a short-lived working group fully dedicated to inventory. This would fall. The charter is being set up in these days. You will find a copy of the charter in the inventory mailing list. So if you are interested, you will find the link there, and feel free to comment and modify and contribute to the charter. The working group, if created, will fall in the operations area. So, and I must have said something wrong because Rob.
Not at all, actually. You summarised it very well. I was just going to just also say I will bring this up with the ISG on Friday. We have this wash-up meeting, so it'd be a good time. I'll mention it there that there's this is going on. There won't be any sort of conclusions, but I need to get the ISG happy with what I'm doing here. But that's my hope. We can go forward with their working group.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Nigel in the queue, please.
So we talked yesterday on the Nigel Davis, Sienna. Sorry, we talked yesterday on the work we're doing in ONF. I thought I'd offer to come to one of your meetings and maybe present that to the broader group, because then there was certainly some interest in what we were doing. Yep. We have a model that's got an equipment inventory. We've done the same separation you're proposing, and the reason you propose that from a H345, so the equivalent topology, is, in my view, absolutely correct. I mean, we've got a view of, as we discussed, strands and physical topology and so on. So I'd happily offer that as a meeting, so maybe we can arrange that afterwards. So
yes, when you come,
aligning those things, I think, would be very sensible.
Let's see what are the gaps there.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Next one is Gabriele. Gabriele, are you online? Are you connected?
Yes, I'm connected.
Wonderful.
I think you can hear me. I will be
Good early morning to you as well.
Thank you. It's 4 p.m. my time. 4 a.m. my time, sorry. Okay, I will be very brief on this interface Younger document. Go to the next one. So basically, the goal, the objective of this draft is to describe all the interface parameters that are needed in DWDM technology. And then we want to be in line with what is described in the optical impairment topology Young, but also be in line with the 1993 bis 01, that is basically the layer 0 Young description. Go next one. Thank you. So the changes of the document has not been that much. Basically, we realign a little bit the definitions and we review the possibility to read and or write information. So changes very few. We still have some errors or some, let's say, not very well defined models, so needs to help here on the from the expert. Go ahead, the next one. And I think the document is pretty stable. Apart, again, the young doctors help needed. We continue to keep an eye to the IQT definition and models, so that is a mandatory activity we need to keep to avoid any mistake or misunderstanding. Again, we have to stay in line or keep in line the document with the impairment topology and the laser type. Regarding the possible last call, I think we think that this will be aligned and we should follow the 1993 bis 01 last call and the optical impairment topology and last call. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriele. So another young doctor review that we will request.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Okay.
Okay.
So I see no question in the room. Thank you, Gabriele. We will move to the next presentation, which is still yours. Okay.
Yours in terms of presentation, yes. Okay, this one probably is more interesting because it's almost brand new. Actually, the CCAMP ACTN POI pluggable 00 is actually a rename of the former draft TIS ACTN POI extension. We changed the name for two reasons, because we want to be more clear on what is inside the document, and also because being this document talking about a specific technology, we thought altogether to move to CCAMP instead of this working group. Next one. How this document is related to the other documents. So we know that we have the ACTN POI applicability that is covering either the, let's say, lower layer, but also the layer 2 and the layer 3. And this is a pretty, let's say, dense informative document that covers multi-layer technology. This document actually does not cover the pluggable components that could be outside the optical lines network, the OLS, and so we had the need. We understood the need to deal with this kind of network topology. So the pluggable, when is installed inside a router or inside a different network layer, needs to be addressed in some way, and we have to provide use cases and a way to manage it. On the other side, we have another document that is the service assurance that will be described by Italo in the TIS working group. Next one. Okay, here I think I already explained, and then I encourage you to hear the Italo presentation in this working group, so we can skip this one. Next. Let's say why we have wrote this document. Number one is let's say extending, if you want, the IETF this ACTM POI applicability. That is the parent of this draft, and actually the ACTM POI applicability doesn't cover the set of use cases where the pluggable are outside the optical network and are actually present or fitted in the upper layer, so in layer 2, layer 3 network or any other network. So this implies to have a management or and control architecture that should help to coordinate any activity, any provisioning, and any, let's say, event reporting. Next one. Okay, we can skip this one because it's simple. So, as you say, we have the packet network and the optical network. The packet network is actually hosting what are the pluggable, or if you want, the DWDM current interface. Next one. And here is actually the proposed control architecture, and is strictly, let's say, aligned with the ACTN. And you can see we might have multiple optical PNC as well as a packet PNC. All of them are coordinated by NDSC. Go ahead. Next one. Here the supported service, actually, go. Okay. One note here is a general note here. As we wrote this document, let's say the contribution came from different contributors. We didn't took care about the terminology that is used in the parent document, for example, and so we apologize for that. And the promise is by the next submission or posting, there will be a coordination with ACTM POI applicability and other draft like layer 0, whatever, to align the terminology so that we have a clean understanding altogether. Next one. The document actually described a significant number of use cases, and let's say is starting from the discovery of some components, like, for example, the passcode between the ROADM and the pluggable inside the router and so on, until the end-to-end provisioning, where end-to-end means not only layer 3 services that are described in ACTN POI applicability, but also the way that all the information should be dealt to make this all happening. And we understood inside let's say, the development team that probably addressing all these use cases is too much. So we are debating to, let's say, prioritize what is the best and most needed at the beginning. So I encourage to look at the draft and then give comments, maybe on the mailing list, on the preference. Next one. Okay, the next step here is actually continue to work, streamline the document, so address the real needed use case at the beginning, Probably you have to click again. Okay. We have a set a GitHub. You can, let's say, join. And then, as this matter is very interesting, especially for the operator, our request is really look at the draft and then maybe contribute with comments or even with new ideas or suggestions. Of course, this document should be strictly coordinated with ACT-MPOI applicability. That's all for the moment. Thank you very much for hearing.
Thank you, Gabriele. We have a question from Yilin.
This is Yilin from Huawei. So thanks for the presentation. I think the key point of this contribution is that the endpoints of the Lambda connection spread to the packet layer. So I think there should be several similar scenarios, like if you use the channelized OTN in the UNI to connect the IP layer and the OTN layer, then the audio connection again spread to the packet layer. So I think it could be possible to generalize your models to cover more POI scenarios. Okay.
Thanks for the question. I think yes, can be done, of course, and is just a matter to let's say add the OTN layer and then see how coordinate at this time IP OTN and DWDM part. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oscar.
Hi. I would like as the hi. Can you hear me? Hi, Arielle. As the work now here is the optical connections start in the router becomes a multi-layer device in this case. So I think now the problem is multi-layer management. So one first comment is that the architecture work of how to manage this needs to be revisited and need to be taken out together between TS and CCAMP, because I think it's a multi-layer problem. And I would like to have as much operators as possible in this topic, because I think it's different than the IP over. Okay, so this is interesting.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
Definitely, Oscar. Thank you to reinforce the message here. We need, I'd say, a big contribution from all the operators, because it's a topic that is happening in the network, and then hopefully we should provide a solution for all of us, for all who are the user of this technology. That is very important here. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Gabriele. Just a note for the next presenters, you all have 7 minutes slot. So if you can manage to give a 5 minutes presentation and then leave 2 minutes for discussion, that would be great. Okay, please.
Okay, Liz Chowder from Huawei. I'm glad to do this presentation on behalf of the other co-authors. And this draft is dealing with the performance monitoring on the optical resource level. And we provide a data model in the northbound. And this draft was presented in IETF116. It was feedback that the name of draft and the data model is too broad and maybe overlap with some extended work in IPPN. So we changed the name of the draft and data model and scope on limited to a small scope on the optical domain and on the resource level. And the main purpose of our document is still had not been changed. We still aim to cover the capability of the traditional management capability of performance monitoring in optical domain. We take the capability of mTOSI as example, and we consider that some operators they have a requirement that to switch to RASCOM interface, but they don't want to change too much on their existing performance monitoring system, so that these manners can reduce the cost of this switching. And for the change on this version, we add some supporting for the TCA configuration, including the profile configuration and the configuration directly on the resources. And we also do the minor change and on the performance monitoring task ID. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Not last slide. Okay. Okay, this is the capability of the traditional management performance monitor, and it is divided into 3 groups, including the performance monitoring control and the TCA control and the performance data related information retrieval. And I want to say that our data model is not a simple translation of the mTOS interface, but it is a supplement of the current ASEAN interface, which we recognize that maybe some the performance monitoring capability is missing in our CCAMP working group on the resource level. And our data model is harmonized with the ASEAN IETF data model, because the object we reference in our data model, such as links, nodes, and LTP, TTP, is defined in the network topology model or in the inventory data model. And on the table on the right, some interface which is in light blue and ended with the name ended with iterator, we consider it is pagination related and it is out of our scope. And for the interface in green color background, it is supported by last version. And in this version, the interface in yellow background have been supported. Next slide, please. And for the traditional management interface, the threshold crossing alert control can be divided into 2 groups. One group is the profile management, and the other group is the configuration on the resource directly. And currently, we provide these 2 parts definition in our data model. Okay, next slide, please. And for the performance monitoring task, we recognize that there's 2 requirements cannot supported by the previous modeling, and maybe the a resource multiple monitoring tasks can be created on single resource. So it is not good to define the resource as the identifier of the monitoring task. Next slide, please. And we also have 3 open issue to discuss, and the first one is that whether we need to separate the some collection manners information separately, or we just merge them into one attributes. There's 2 options. You can refer to these 2 options. And for the second question is that for the definition of indicator's name, there's an argument to use a specific identity type or use a string format. If we use a identity type, it is very good for interop, but we cannot list all the indicator need to support it in optical domain. In the future, I think there could be some more attributes we have not recognized. So then maybe the data model need to be changed. And for the string format, it is very flexible, but it is not good for interop. Okay, and for the third issue we want to discuss is about the relationship between our model and the consignor performance monitoring draft. In our consideration, the performance data on the consignor draft can be calculated by the data collected by our data model. For example, the bandwidth of the bandwidth usage of consignor service can be calculated by the package received or transmitted on the CAN side. Okay, and also for the consignor performance monitoring draft, they only focus on the performance on the CAN side, but our data model can retrieve all the performance data on all the resources. Okay, next slide, please. And for the next step, we will continue to cover the capability of mTOS interface, which have not supported right now. And we also welcome to the people who want to join our work. Thank you. Thank you. That's all for the draft.
I have Oscar Gonzalez, one question. Is this optical specific or it is applicable to many technologies? Because I see the threshold crossing alerts and can apply also to some microwave parameters or any other technological parameter that some measurement crosses a threshold, so and also the mitosis.
We prefer this draft is optical specific, and it's currently the data model is quite generic, but in the future we will define some optical specific attributes in the future. Yeah.
So then it seems that there is a part that is generic that could be used for all the technologies, and maybe
Strange, it never happens.
Sorry?
Never happens that in CCAMP we have this type of issues.
No, never. First time to see it.
Nigel is in the queue, then Dieter, and then we move on.
Hi. So we've done some work in TAPI on this as well, and for the you mentioned the potentially using an identity for the name of the measure. We actually chose to put two identifiers in, so actually an identity when you've got one, and also a free format string when you haven't got one, or maybe both when maybe the device has one name and you want to go and normalize it. So that might be a technique you want to use to resolve that. And we could potentially talk on some other things, maybe if you have a set of meetings, we could talk on some other things you've done in TAPI that might be useful for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Dieter?
Can you hear me?
Very low, but we can.
Okay. We have always been encouraged by our chairs to reference data plane standards where applicable. And looking at the references in this draft, I'm missing a reference to IETF recommendation G77.
Dieter, is hard to understand what you're saying.
I will write it on the chat or send an email to this.
Yeah, maybe on the mailing list it would be even better.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Dieter.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, another draft about the performance monitoring, which is a companion draft of the previous one. Actually, this one comes earlier as a client signal performance monitoring. And next slide, please. So what we are doing here is trying to monitor the performance of a client signal which is already deployed in the network. And actually, this is a more procedural description on what is the right order for doing it. So after we collect the topology, create an OTN tunnel, and deploy the client signal. On that, we will start this kind of performance monitoring, and it can be composed. It can be decomposed into the Ethernet and transparent client signals, and we create a table to indicate, okay, what kind of parameters can be used as a part of the performance monitoring. Next, please. So, okay, model relationship. So we this work is based on the client signal draft. So we import both the Ethernet and the transparent client service model from that draft. And we also clarify a little bit on what are the relationship with the other document. For example, the previous one presented is basically focused on the resource only. And this one is from the client signal perspective. They have something in common, but for different functionalities. And we also see there are some previous work talking about ACT and telemetry autonomous. That one also focus on the performance monitoring for the VM, for the tunnels, instead of the how this should be the client signal covered in this document. It's not. It's just very simple on the two ends of the tunnels. Next, please. So this is the core of the model structure. I will skip the details, but just trying to show what is the most important factor. So firstly, we have the performance data with a key as with a parameter name as a key, and the value pair can be do that inside the structure to indicate the numerical values. So this would be a very generic structure to understand, okay, what parameter is monitored and how it is measured. So we have two open issues to work on, including how to do the measurement and at which point we need to measure what kind of performance. But basically, this could be dependent a little bit on the resource PM as well. Next, please. And yeah, another functionality we are working on in this document is about the OAM. So the model just indicate how to configure the OAM in the source and destination node, and how to set the intervals for different OAM functionalities, including the DM, LRM, and the CC. Next, please. So we have completed every section in the draft, and we confirmed the model relationship with other drafts, and we have I think quite good interest in doing this work. So this has been a little bit quiet for a recent year because we are creating the previous one based on from the resource perspective. Now we think everything is harmonized, and we do request for the working group adoption. Meanwhile, we will continue working on the clarification with other models, because we may not enumerate every PM models in IETF, and we will trying to also working on the details of each PM parameters, including on where it is defined as commented by data and how to measure how and where to do the measurement. And that's it. Thank you. Question.
Okay, we have a question.
Yeah, I have a question on this, because the module name is IETF service PM, right?
Oh,
I think that this is quite confusing.
Okay, open for that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So we have a polling now. Let's see. Yes.
So the policy is to check if there is interest in the group for adopting this work. The formal process will be set out later on in the mailing list, but this is just to measure the temperature here in the working group meeting. Okay. Yep. Okay, it seems there is interest on moving forward this work, so yeah, we will bring to the mailing list. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next two drafts are not CCAMP drafts. One comes from has been presented at the OPSA working group. The other one will be presented in TEAS. So it's just an heads up to CCAMP on this work being done in other working groups. Okay.
Okay, this is Charlie again. I'm glad to do this presentation for this draft. And this draft is introduce a solution for instant management solution and provide a young data model on the northbound of domain control. Next slide, please. And this is a totally new draft, and it is presented in NetCom on Monday. And for time being, it is not presented in ops area yesterday. And for this draft, we consider the motivation is the traditional alarm management approach is not sustainable, because that the traditional approach relies on the information or alarms information, and which requires human experiment to filter the root cause alarm and find the detail of fault location. And it is time consuming. And for some operator who provide a wide list to filter the root cause alarm at, there could be some problem that duplicate ticket will be dispatched to the maintenance engineers. And for the root cause analyze, they only relies on the alarms information. It's not so accurate. And here we consider that for if the device and the service level for the existing modeling standard, there could be it is feasible to compress the correlated alarm and the root cause alarm into an instant. And then if the operator adopt the management or instant, it will be help to reduce the quantity of data. And also for performance data and trace log can help for the root cause analysis. And currently there's also a lot of technology like AI and machine learning. Machine learning can help to deal with the complexity, complicate correlation. And also there's some technology can help for the fault location. In our optical domain, there's a technology such like OTDR. Okay, and currently we support to propose to a new instant-based fault management solution. And in this solution, we provide the architecture of different layers and define the functionality of each layer. And we define the young data model in between the integrated incident management agent and client. Next slide, please. This is the architecture. It is divided into the incident management client and incident management agent and the network layer. And the incident management agent usually is the domain controller and provide the instance detection, reporting, and diagnosis, resolution, and querying. And for the client, usually it invokes the functionality provided by the agent and to fulfill the requirement of the customer. And the network layer, you need to provide the reports, the alarms and trace log and performance data as before, but maybe some small frequency data collection may be needed. And for the interface between the client and agent, it is the functionality includes the instance report and acknowledge and diagnosis and resolve. And next slide, please. And currently, we have defined this data model, including the details or information or incident, and we define the 3 RPC for the operation between the client and agent, and we define a notification for the instant report. Next slide, please. And for the next step, at first we need to confirm whether there's any optical specific for this instant management solution in our optical domain, because we consider that currently the data model defined in this draft is quite generic, and it is currently it is pushing in ops area. And maybe we consider that maybe for the modeling or OTN connection and also for the technology or OTDR, maybe related with this solution, and maybe in the future there could be some extension in our CCAMP. Okay, and for the next step, we also try to we'll define the RPC interface to support the whole solution, and we also welcome the people who want to join our work. Thank you.
Thanks for saying our CCAMP. It shows belonging.
Thank you.
Yeah, before the next steps, I was about to ask you what this is a very interesting work, but why you were presenting this in CCAMP. Now it's clear because you foresee technology specific extensions to it in the near future, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks a lot. And last but not least.
Okay, so this is Iowa again. I promise to finish it in 2 minutes. A brief, again, this is going to be presented in TEAS. So this is just a recap of what we're going to present. The network slice topology, next page. Okay, so as Bo has questioned, the motivation to have this topology is, as also put in the framework document, that an IETF network slice could ask for some additional level of control by to customize the service path, and we believe a topology is best suitable for this purpose. There are several benefits of using a network slice, using a topology to allow better resource reservation and sharing among connections within a network slice. We call this type of topology a network slice topology. Next page. Right. So basically, this topology is a customized topology that expresses what a customer really likes. It's not some topology that is exposed by a provider. For the existing models like network topology or TE topology, I mean, what we see it's missing is that it does not have the SLO, SLEs that can be expressed, can express customers' intent. So that's why we wanted to define a new model for that. And also, fortunately, we already have an existing draft, I mean, which has expired, but which was initially proposed partially for this purposes. So next page. This is the draft LU in TEAS. I forgot to put in the most important comments in there is in this change, we reposition the draft LU so initially what was visioned for draft LU is sort of like an alternative model to define a network slice as a topology, right? What we reposition this draft is to, instead of as an alternative solution for network slice, we wanted to make it as a complementary draft that model to define a topology which could be referenced by a network slice. And to do that, we just like build the topology by adding additional SLO, SLE attributes, which is common to, which is defined by the NSMBI, and we've applied it to different topology constructs in this model. And we also then removed the additional augments from the existing, from the older model that models the connectivity, because this is already defined by the NSMBI, and some relevant text and diagram updates as well. Next page. Yeah, so I think we can skip it. This is just an update in the model relationship. Next page. That's just a simple tree of the models. As you can see, it's just adding the SLO, SLEs that are applied to nodes, links, TPs of the topology. Next page. Yeah, skip it. Right, I think I can leave the rest to TEAS. There are open issues, and also we discussed that on the side meeting, so that will be reflected in the next update.
You're not asking us to arrange a call, right?
No.
Okay, I have a question, but probably I will leave it for the TEAS session tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks a lot. I think the first session of our new chair went pretty well. Yeah. So thanks a lot. He's already capable to run polls, and for Fatay and me, it took like years to understand how to do it. So we are pretty sure he'll do very well. Thanks a lot, Luis. Welcome again, and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.
who go after different things. For all these action points of the young, asking for the young reviews and so, should we meet this week for organization of sales or maybe after the IETF?
Maybe between today and tomorrow we can arrange something. So requesting the review, it's super simple.
So you're just going through the draft and